everyone's got to really sit back and realize this is one of the great moments in our history, in the history of the West. This is what, for 5 decades, the Iranian regime has tortured its people, has terrorized the West, has terrorized the people of Israel, has threatened world peace, is an evil regime with an evil theocracy at the heart of that regime. And finally, an American president has stepped up and done what the West did at the end of the Second World War, used its military superiority to destroy an evil regime and save millions of deaths down. We will never know, thank goodness, how many people would have died had Iran got a nuclear weapon. We can only imagine the horror and the terror that awaited us. Donald Trump has consistently, for decades, long before he was in politics, said what many of us knew and believed to be the case: Iran must never, ever be allowed to have nuclear weapons. We had all that nonsense for 8 years of the Barack Obama regime pussyfooting around with the Iranians, shipping pallets of gold bullion and gold bars, saying, oh, you can have your nuclear weapons, but just not now, push it a bit further down the track. Trump said no. Trump has defied the Iranian regime. He's defied all the naysayers. He's defied the left. Penny Wong, Anthony Albanese, no, you don't de-escalate. We don't need your nice little lefty slogans. What we need is decisive Western power to say no to an evil and put an end to it. Donald Trump is saying now that the 3, if you just tuned in, the 3 nuclear bases of Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan, the Americans have struck successfully. And he's saying this is obviously the first step towards peace. Now, Rita, we were just talking about your family, your childhood in Iran. Rita, I believe you will return to Iran and see Iran with your family as it was when you left. I hope that is the outcome of what we learned this morning. Donald Trump has dropped 3 bombs on the Iranian nuclear power plants.
Well, when Penny Wong talks about de-escalation, she's talking about the continuation of the reign of the mad mullahs, of the Islamist regime in Iran. That's what de-escalation means. It means they continue in power and you stop bombing them and stop trying to have regime change. I've got to say, I did not think in my lifetime, and let's not jump the gun here because the regime could survive this. We don't know exactly. I mean, it's literally happened in the last few minutes. But if there is regime change, it's something I didn't think would happen in my lifetime, that I would be able to ever go back to Iran, because certainly I haven't been there since I fled with my family. It would be madness for me to go back. I'd be locked up and executed in record time. But if there is regime change, obviously, that would be something that could happen. So I genuinely did not think that was a possibility, because I didn't think we would have a Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is a generational leader. He is a leader unlike any we have seen, certainly in my lifetime again. And what he has managed to do in short period of time domestically, you look at what he's done with that illegal immigration crisis in a matter of weeks, and what he's been able to do to the Iranian regime. The first term, he demoralised them, he impoverished them, he isolated them. Absolutely. We're told that was going to start World War III. It did not. And this time around, if he is pivotal in seeing regime change there, astonishing.
James, let me just quickly say, we'll do an outsider show in Isfahan with Rita and James and Rowan. That's on the cards. Cool. That's what we're going to do.
That would be so cool. That'd be the best outside broadcast ever. But, you know, I'm going to talk a bit more in this next segment about Penny Wong and all of that stuff. But, you know, it's such a contrast, because all through this Albanese Labour government, we have seen Anthony Albanese say, oh, well, you know, we're standing up for Australian values. And what we've revealed here today in the last, 2 hours, 24 hours, last week or so, has really been that Australian values, when it comes to foreign policy, don't exist. They are the values of both sidesism. They're the values of saying, hey, everybody calm it down. That's actually not peacemaking. That's a peace of the dead. That is giving peace to dictators and bad guys. And this is not about, going in and stomping around the world and overturning every regime we don't like. This is about a regime that, as Rita very capably explicated, is a terrible regime that abuses its own people and that has been responsible ever since those students stormed the American embassy in 1979, and many of them went on, including Ahmadinejad, to become leaders of this regime, sponsored terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, made the Lebanese civil war the horror show that it was, sponsored assassinations around the world, sponsored hijackings around the world, blew up Jewish cultural centers around the world, including one in Argentina many years ago that killed around 200 people, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. There is so much bad stuff sheeted home to this regime. The idea that this government, that Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese would say, oh, well, let's just be peaceful about it. Let's just try and dial things down so that they can survive and keep doing all the awful stuff they're doing. Well, I don't know what's driving that. Is it a sense of weakness and a failure to understand Australia's true interests? Is it more sinister? Is it a more sinister thing where it is trying to filter domestic politics through our foreign policy and say, well, maybe our Islamic communities here might not appreciate our standing up against Iran. Now, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. But yeah, I agree. But I think that. But it's just you've got to wonder what all the possibilities are with this.
I think it's just a deeply ideological position that these people have held from their days in student politics. I don't think it's more complicated than that. I think because of the way the media reports on Trump, they also see it as being politically useful to take that position. But overwhelmingly, I think it's a position born out of their ideology. This is what they believe. This is why they entered politics. They are fundamentally...
well, they're anti-Western.
Anti-Western, so yeah. This guilt about Australia, this black armband view of our country, it extends to Western civilization, and that's where these positions come from. And you look at the fact that the Australian Labor Party, our current government, is ruled by their socialist left faction. It pretty much clears up why we're here.
And they're not, we know that Labor is not comfortable with the country's Anglo-English heritage. We know that they're not comfortable with Australia's historic American alliance since World War II. And so, they wind up in this sort of identity politics world where anybody that's not Western, they wind up giving a bit of an up to, because it's always like whoever's the most sort of anti-Western, well, they're on their side. That's why they had to both sides. It's undergraduate. That's why they had to, pussyfoot around Israel and Hamas. That's why they've done the same thing here. Well, hey, bad news, guys. I'm sorry to break it to you, but something bad has happened to Iran.
Exactly. So if you've just tuned in, I just repeat, the news is Donald Trump is saying that he has dropped 3 bombs on Iran, on the 3 nuclear power plants of Fordow, Isfahan and Natanz. Now, I believe what virtually no other commentator does say or believe, or politicians certainly, with only a handful of exceptions, believe. We are now at a pivotal moment in history, and I'm prepared to say it out loud. Donald J. Trump is one of the most extraordinary and crucial political figures of the modern era, possibly since the American Civil War. All the Trump derangement syndrome crowd, and there are so many of them, look increasingly ridiculous. It's too soon to crow, as Rita was saying, for certain, but it looks increasingly likely that we will finally see peace in the Middle East and an end to the terrorism stoked for 5 decades by the sinister and evil Iranian theocratic regime. We are on the threshold of a new Middle East order dominated by an Abraham alliance of Israel, Egypt, the Saudis, and other peaceful Arabic nations. It will be far from perfect, of course, but for the first time in any of our lifetimes, there is strong reason to be optimistic about the Middle East, and the reason is because of 2 men, both of whom I have admired and proudly stood up for many years in the face of unrelenting smears and hatred from the chattering classes and even from the fake conservatives of the West. Those 2 men are, of course, Donald J. Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. I've had the privilege of meeting and talking to Benjamin Netanyahu, and I've had the privilege of being one of Donald Trump's very first and certainly his most consistent Australian media supporters since 2015, even before he was a candidate for the White House. All those idiots who have been repeatedly telling you that Trump is an embarrassment, a buffoon, a shambles, he's incoherent, he's crazy, he's out of control, have only embarrassed yourselves. I've always said, judge Trump on his results, not on how he gets there. The end of the Iranian theocratic regime, which is now a potential and hopefully is now imminent, is as significant as Imperial Japan's surrender and as extraordinary as the fall of the Berlin Wall. Trump, I've always maintained, will be remembered in the same league as Thatcher and Reagan, and there's every chance he may even eclipse both of them.